So are these big bore kits really getting you better power? Well, today we're going to find out. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to finally test that big bore kit on our G366. Is this big bore really going to get any better power than what we got on our factory cylinder? But first I want to go out and actually do some test cuts. That way we can time our gasket delete, empty can, muffler mod, big carb, and air filter mod against the same exact setup in a big bore. So we'll have the dyno runs and in the wood timed cuts. We're going to actually make some cookies today. We don't have to cut up firewood. But I'll cut off a decent sized round of that cherry we have, hold it in the splitter, get a couple good cuts, just a 20-inch C83 that we've been using, and we'll run those times. Well, we'll come back in, swap our cylinder on, no gasket, just like this one, check the squish, we'll go over some of the differences in the ports, and we'll see if this big bore really makes the power. Leave a comment, let me know what you think this big bore is going to put up, and if you've used one, leave a comment, let me know how they've treated you. Did you really feel more power? Did you really wonder? But let me know. And that way everybody else can know too. But we'll go out, we'll get a piece of cherry cut up, held in the wood splitter, and then we'll come back in and do our test. Alright, so here's our hunk of cherry. 20-inch bar. Like I said, so not super huge, but good size test. And we'll make our cut, and then we'll time that cut, and we'll do the same after we swap the big bore on after our dyno run. Alright, Mr. UPS man just showed up and dropped off a new toy. Thermal camera. So, you know, just had to play with it a little bit. So it looks like our cylinder is still about 148 degrees. Muffler's cooled down a little bit, 125. But that's kind of neat. So let me know how you think we can add this into the channel, and we'll start tearing down this saw once it cools down a little bit more. Alright, we got our test cut done. Now we can start taking this apart. Again, just super quick tear down here. Still getting a little bit of spit back on our filter, but that's going to happen anytime you have a piston port. It's going to spin a little bit. That's why they have that elbow in the filter like that from factory. So if you do this modification to your filter elbow, just know that you're going to get some spit back on your filter and you have to blow it off a little bit more. This is the one thing I don't like about not having the carb normal. Having to take this handle piece off every time. A moment of truth. It still looks good. Alright, so we'll pull our intake boot off. Okay, here's our two cylinders. Factory. Let's get all of our big bore pieces out. Alright, there you go. Super similar looking. We'll come up closer. Let me get this piston off real quick. Alright, let's go throw these pistons, rings, clips, pins on the scale. Alright, stock piston. We've got 86 grams. 86 grams on the big bore as well. So whatever they did, kept the weight the same between these two setups. $86 again on the stock. Just want to double check. 86 on the big bore. So we got the same weight on both. All right, after seeing that, let me double check and make sure that we did get a big bore. Yep, definitely bigger than the other one. So they did a good job matching the weight of the up and down. So the big bore piston comes with the clip with these ears like this. I highly recommend snipping these as close as you can, because you do have the notches here. So you can snip these right off at that bend, because a lot of times the frequencies and the harmonics will make that snap off and eventually take out your top end. You could see this Holz Forma, this is a factory one. This is just like what the steel clips are. There's no ears on them. These are definitely thinner clips on this one, and we got a larger slot there, so I don't want to do that. But if you are going to use these clips long term, I highly recommend taking that ear out. For our little bit of testing right now, I'm not going to bother. Alright, one other thing you want to do on this is make sure that when you do install it, if you keep those tails on, you keep them in the up and down, the 12 or 6 position on a clock. That way they don't, if they're horizontal, they can actually get bouncing and pop the clip out too. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But let's look at the differences in the skirt size. So the skirts are wide enough on this big bore that you can get the ports all the way to 70+% bore width. So that's good to know if you do want to port one of these. But we're not going that far just yet. So we got our ports here. So you can see the cylinder doesn't look too awful bad. One thing stands out right away. This has got a flat intake snout, where our other one's got the dish and the hole. So this will definitely either line up better or worse if you were to match your intake boot. And this has got that little recess there. That's no good. Definitely don't want that. So intake ports. It almost looks like our factory one on the right is slightly larger than the big bore. I know it's hard for you guys to see, but this big bore tunnels are relatively tight. Let me see if I can get a little bit of Play-Doh in there. See if we can get some size too. Alright, so let's see if we can get a little bit of Play-Doh down in those transfers. Put a little bit of oil in there just to hopefully get our mold made and not let it stick. So it's not the greatest, but you can kind of see the cross section there. We're relatively thin on our big bore versus how much thicker those tunnels are. So that means that this cylinder here has more transfer area in the tunnels. Alright, now we'll make a mold of the actual uppers. Alright, this is just the opposite. Here's the big bore. You can see how tall and thick that is versus how thin and narrow our factory is. So on the factory we had large volume in the tunnels and nice tight uppers to really aim and keep the pressure velocity up, but mainly direction I think is where it's at. So you got big tunnels to fill with charge, then when that piston cracks you got nice tight focused uppers. Where on the big bore you got small tunnels to fill with charge and then giant uppers to, yeah, it lets it flow, but if it doesn't have good control then we can't quite aim it where we need it. So those are just two things I noticed. So that was just something I wanted to try. Like I said, I thought I noticed it that this casting had rather large tunnels and small uppers. And like I said, that just kind of proves it. I know it's hard for you guys to see, but these upper ports are just rather large, a little bit taller, and then same thing. That typically happens with these big bores. They make the bore larger, but they shrink the volume that you can get inside those tunnels. But as far as plating and quality goes, They both look super similar. Looks like our factory does have a little bit bigger intake area. If those tunnels aren't flowing enough and everything else is restricted, you're really just moving a bigger piston. But we're going to get this bolted down. We'll give it a try and see exactly how it does. One thing I did notice is our top cover stud was missing. So you can see our squish band's got a little bit of machine band around there. Definitely still has some casting stuff on it. But we'll see what it does. There's our factory one. See, this one's really not too awful bad. A little bit machine band, but nowhere near as many casting boo-boos on our factory. But we'll check the squish real quick. So we know the tight spot on our factory cylinder was 18 thousandths squish. Let me know where you think this big bore is going to come in. Think they hit it right? Or where do you think it'll be? Think it'll be looser or tighter than factory? Definitely feels a little bit looser than the other one. And I remember not to smash my thumb this time. Alright, let's see what it's at. This one did have a larger squish band, so it should stay consistent flat. 24 thousandths on that side. 24 thousandths on that side. So that's a lot closer to where I like to see them run. So I'll throw the rings on, the boot on, get this cleaned up and stuck down. Alright, so we got our big bore all installed now. Finished tightening some things down. Alrighty, here it is, all assembled. Got our big bore set up on it. Now we just gotta see if it fires up. Then we'll put it on the dyno, see what kind of power it puts out. Let me know where you think it's gonna be. You think it will be above or below where we're at. So we got no base gasket, empty can, muffler mod, big carb. Big carb might like the extra displacement, and our air filter mod. No base gasket. Squish was rated at 24 thousandths, so just a touch more squish than our factory cylinder. But let me know where you think the power is going to be. And I'll see if it fires up. Alright, well, it lives, so we'll get it put on the dyno and see what kind of power it puts out. We'll see it. I think it sounds a little different. Do you think it sounds a little bit different? I wouldn't think the displacement would make it that way, but maybe. Same thing, we haven't thrown the degree wheel on any of these cylinders yet, so port timing could indeed be different. Here's our big bore all bolted on the dyno, and we'll get our runs done, see what kind of power it puts up. Well, that's different than what I thought. Alright, I did not expect that at all. But sometimes our eyes and ears and everything deceives us. And sometimes this Chinese quality control works in our favor, and other times it doesn't. So we'll get our bar and chain put on. We'll go make our test cut while it's still all warmed up and everything. But I was really shocked to see just how comparable these two were. I didn't expect it to be that way. But let me get this test cut done, and we'll look at the graph, and we'll look at this cut time and see what's going on in the wood, what's going on the dyno. Alright, so our big bore like to tune about the same. So we got it all warmed up still. We'll make our cut and then we'll be able to compare these times. That one definitely leaned up a little bit more than where our other cut was, but we'll just check the times and go from there. And we do have the dyno run on them, so we'll be able to see just how this big bore compares in the wood and on paper. So there we go, we got a full before cuts, swap the cylinder, put our big bore on. We got dyno after big bore, and we got cuts after big bore. So there's not a whole lot more we could do with this. But I was actually kind of surprised at how many RPM these little 361s, 366s like to turn. They definitely like to be on the higher side. So we'll have to keep that in mind as we're using them. I think that might be some of the popping we heard on the pipe. It really just wanted to be leaned out a little bit. But we'll take a look at this graph. I was actually super surprised how close these two were. So we'll take a look at the graph and let me know what you guys think. So here's what we got. They're actually super close, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. You can see this is our big bore on top, the green lines, 6.1 horse, 3.67 foot-pounds. So it did make a little bit better torque down low. And power was, I mean, we'll call that the same. So maybe those tighter transfer tunnels didn't hurt us at this power level. So since we gained 6 cc and didn't really see much improvement in peak power, I don't know if that's really a good thing. So we'll call that inconclusive. And here's our run from last time. You can see in this run, it actually held the power a little bit better in that area where you're going to use it. So overall, on this big bore 366, I can't really call it one way or the other. We did add about 6 cc's. Didn't really change much power. Now this one being a plain chrome bore, you might be able to get away with getting it ported up. Big bore has awful wide skirts, so you could do wide ports if that was your thing. So there might be some potential in this clone 366 big bore that has been close to the actual takeoff cylinder. Now both of these cylinders, I don't know, I don't have an actual OEM one here right now. We'll have to find one. You know, so we're still talking aftermarket versus aftermarket. I don't have an OEM one here. So that might change things a little bit. But so far, this 361 big bore was not a horrible option. Now I do know I've seen 372s myself, big bore, perform at a lesser standard than the OEM 50 millimeter. But that's aftermarket versus OEM. Here we have aftermarket versus aftermarket. So take this for what you will, and hopefully you enjoyed. And it looks like this big bore is pretty much on par with our takeoff cylinder. They're both still aftermarket, so that is what it is. But I was really thinking those larger tunnels on our takeoff cylinder were going to shine, and they might shine more as the porting progresses. But let me know what you think of this video, and make sure to check out one of these other videos here. And as always, thanks a lot, everyone.